I want to start first off with a story from your colleague Peter Bedell at the Courier Mail who broke the news. Brisbane set for a second NRL team as early as 2022. The Brisbane Bombers seem to be leading the way. There was some concerns, I guess, that expansion might be put on the back burner in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, but in some ways it might have sped it up instead.
Yes, it's a good point, Scott. A lot of people thought expansion was on the back burner, but the contrary view is set to triumph, that it could actually regenerate the game. And I feel that Brisbane's been ready for a second team for at least a decade. And that's how long some of these franchises have been together. The Brisbane Bombers and the Ipswich franchise, they have been sitting patiently for a decade. So the commitment's there. And look, there are a lot of questions to be answered, such as the financials. Will they cannibalise the Broncos and the Gold Coast? I think Peter V'landys is a bit cautious about that. But, Scott, there's also the theory that if you can plough your field when during a drought, and let's face it, that's what the coronavirus is. It's stricken the finances. When the rain comes, you can actually really grow. So if you can get the second team up and running during this tough time, it could really take over. So it's a terrific thought. I hope they go through with it.
Well, Peter V'landys is a doer and he seems set on the fact that expansion will happen in Brisbane. And what's your understanding of the prospective bids? I guess the Bombers seem to be the front runners, as mentioned.
Yeah, the Brisbane Bombers, led by Nick Livermore, son of Ross Livermore, who used to run the NRL, the QRL, they've been pitching away for a decade. I think they're the best organised bid. They've had a 200-page document they've submitted on where they are. Probably just behind them are Redcliffe and Ipswich. Ipswich have been there for the long haul. Redcliffe have sort of flirted with it a little bit. Sometimes they look interested, other times they don't. And, of course, there's the East Tigers, and they're the last bit on the scene. But, Scott, I must say this. There is no team far ahead or far enough behind that things can't change in the twinkling of an eye once things are slapped on the table. It's like a game of poker. Everyone's got their cards up in front of their face. What have you actually got? We won't know. I mean, if one team could produce like a major backer, like I'll pluck a name, say Andrew Forrest from Perth, and said he's our major sponsor and he's putting this in, well, they could jump up the queue. So it's really exciting times. And I don't mind the tight deadline, Scott, because it sort of turbocharges everything. It doesn't sort of just dribble along.
You mentioned, Andrew Forrest as an example, and I know what you mean, that anyone who's ready to meet the deadline that is 2022 may just jump to the top of the queue to join the competition in Brisbane. But when we're talking recruiting coaches, players, staff and securing facilities as well, it sounds like a pretty difficult task to be ready for the 2022 season.
It does, but the lines have been in the water. I know that the Brisbane Bombers have been in contact with Craig Bellamy for many years. Just a subtle sort of occasional contact, but Bellamy has children on the or a child on the Gold Coast, and he visits up to Brisbane when he can. So they will no doubt pursue that lead if they get the licence, maybe even beforehand. Like, it would be a terrific credential to slap on the table saying, if we get this bid, we have an agreement with Craig Bellamy that he will join the club. Now, OK, that's a long way from happening as we sit here, but they have been in contact with him. He has confirmed that. He has shown some interest. It would be his final port of call in his coaching career. So, you know, that's a credential right there. I mean, that's an appealing part of any bid. So the Ipswich bid, will they go for Kevin Walters as their coach? Could that be the NRL break he's been searching for decades? So the plot thickens. There'll be a lot of great news stories out of this. There really will.
Yeah, plenty more to discuss as the time wears towards 2022 crash. Let's go from teams wanting to get into the competition to a team in it and struggling big time, with Mal Meninga reading the riot act to Titans players to improve.
He has indeed. He's basically said shape up or ship out. And that's a big statement for Mal to make, because he's much more of a sort of a nurturing coach. He likes to sort of cajole and get blokes through the positive way. But he's also a winner, and he's not used to failure, and he doesn't like underachievement and underperformance. And I think his blood is starting to boil on the Gold Coast. Scott, they have got a lot of players on a lot of money down there. Their salary cap's the same as every other club. So there's players that are on 700,000 that are playing as if they're on 250. So, you know, I'm sure this will jolt the club, but they just can't keep playing the way that they are at the moment. Not with all this talk about a second Brisbane team coming in, because they're in the shadows now, and they'll be completely distanced if there is another second team coming in Brisbane.
Crash, I've been saying it all weekend. How good is it to have the footy back? But seriously, what have you enjoyed most of just having the footy back? I guess generically, has there been a standout performance from a team or individual that you've just loved?
Just the return of the little men, the old nippers and darters, and just watching players really struggle again. It's lovely because I think the little man disappeared out of the game. I mean, the Alan Langers and the Jeff Tuveys, and it was sad that rugby league became such a biff and bash, four-square game that they just sort of crunched little guys. But now with the fatigue factor and the new rules, which I previously lambasted, but I must admit I now enjoy, it's just given that sort of player a chance to get back in the contest. And I think it's wonderful. And also enjoyed, this is a rule introduced several seasons ago, but with the game going globally, Scott, I love that rule where the corner post is in play. A winger can touch it, and he's still in play. We're seeing these beautiful tries with wingers floating across the sideline. I think as the game goes global, that's the one that will attract a lot of attention overseas. People look up and say, hey, have a look at that guy. That's quite something.